My daughter traveled, left me at home and treated me like a maid. I said something she never expected. I was treated like a burden, ignored inside the house that I built with years of sacrifice. She told me to shut up, exposed me in front of others, and even said my life was too comfortable. The day she came back, she no longer found the submissive mother. She found a woman who chose to free herself, even if it was too late. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. We continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear in your life. The aroma of pots seasoned with rosemary and basil permeated every corner of the small house in Westfield. Ellen, at 58, moved with almost youthful energy between the kitchen and the living room, adjusting the final details. Her grey hair, normally tied in an unpretentious bun, was loose today and carefully combed. At least 3 times that morning she had checked whether the Egyptian cotton sheets, those she only used on special occasions, were perfectly stretched on the guest room bed. "Will she like the room like this?" Ellen murmured to herself, repositioning a small vase of violets on the bedside table. Maybe it's too old-fashioned for her taste. The doorbell didn't ring at 3 in the afternoon as agreed, not at 4 either. When the clock marked almost 6, Ellen had already reheated dinner twice and changed clothes 3 times. The sound of a car parking made her run to the window. A yellow taxi stopped in front of the gate, and from it descended Amanda, her only daughter, wearing an Italian-tailored suit and dark glasses that hid any trace of emotion. "Mom," said Amanda with a brief nod, while the driver removed her 2 enormous suitcases from the trunk. There was no hug, not even a complete smile, just that formal greeting that Ellen knew so well. "Darling, I thought you weren't coming anymore." Ellen tried to disguise the anxiety in her voice as she approached to help with the luggage. "Is everything okay? Was the trip smooth?" "Normal. The flight was delayed. Then I hit traffic," Amanda replied while checking her phone. "I need a shower urgently. Is the room ready?" Ellen nodded, swallowing the small disappointment. Always like this. Always that distance. "I prepared everything the way you like. I even put that lavender soap that you—" "Mom," Amanda interrupted, "I brought my own products. You know I've been allergic to lavender since I was 15. Ellen felt her face burn. "Of course, I'm sorry. I completely forgot." As she climbed the stairs behind her daughter, Ellen noticed how Amanda had changed in just 8 months since her last visit. Thinner, more tense, with an air of permanent impatience on her face that was previously only occasional. At 32, her daughter was a marketing executive at a multinational in New York, surrounded by deadlines, meetings, and networking. "Your father called earlier," Ellen commented, trying to fill the silence while Amanda unpacked. "He's eager to see you tomorrow at lunch." "I imagine so," she responded without emotion. "Is he well?" "Yes, Richard is great. That new wife of his works wonders. It seems like he's rejuvenated 10 years since he married Debbie." Amanda smiled for the first time since she arrived. At least someone is happy in this family. The phrase hung in the air like a dense fog. Ellen pretended not to hear, busying herself with opening the windows in the room. "I think you'll like dinner. I made that eggplant lasagna that—" "I'm not hungry, Mom. The airplane snack was enough. I'll just take a shower and sleep. I'm exhausted." It was always like this. The invisible barrier between them seemed to grow each year, with each hurried visit during family holidays. Ellen wondered at what point she had lost connection with her daughter. Was it after the divorce from Richard, when Amanda was only 14, or had it been earlier, in the small daily disconnections that she hadn't known how to resolve? That night, Ellen dined alone, accompanied only by the silence of the house and the distant sound of the shower upstairs. She then carefully saved a portion for Amanda, in case she changed her mind during the night. In the morning, Ellen woke up early and was surprised to find Amanda already in the kitchen, making coffee while speaking on the phone in English. She was wearing workout clothes and seemed agitated. "Yes, I'm resolving that. No, I won't let it slide. Of course, by Monday at the latest," she said in a professional tone. Noticing her mother's presence, she made a brief gesture of acknowledgement and continued the conversation. Ellen prepared breakfast in silence, avoiding interrupting. She set out fresh fruits, whole grain breads, cheeses, and juices, everything she knew Amanda appreciated. When she finally hung up the phone, Amanda sighed deeply. "Work problems?" Ellen asked cautiously. "The usual. Other people's incompetence that I have to fix." Amanda poured herself some coffee. Sorry about last night, I was really exhausted. Ellen smiled, feeling a small opening. No problem, darling. I completely understand. Your life is very busy. And yours, Mum, how is it going? The question caught Ellen by surprise. It had been a long time since Amanda had shown genuine interest in her life. Well, I'm giving some painting classes to children at the community center. It's volunteer work, but it does me good. Painting? Amanda raised her eyebrows. I didn't know you painted. I started about 2 years ago, after after we separated. Anthony had been Ellen's second husband. A relationship of 6 years that ended quietly, like many things in her life. Amanda nodded without asking more questions. She went back to checking messages on her phone, while distractedly eating a slice of papaya. Are Grandma and Grandpa coming for lunch too? She asked, without taking her eyes off the screen. Yes, your grandmother Teresa insisted. You know how she gets when you visit. And how long do they plan to stay? I have some work calls to make in the afternoon. Ellen felt her stomach sink. There was always a time limit, always something more important waiting. Don't worry, she replied in a controlled voice. They won't stay long. They know you have commitments. Silence settled between them again. Ellen observed her daughter discreetly as she finished her coffee. There was so much she wanted to ask. If she was happy, if there was someone special in her life, if she still dreamed of living abroad, as she always said when she was a teenager. But the words seemed stuck in her throat, blocked by the fear of receiving cold or evasive answers. I'm going out for a quick run, announced Amanda, getting up. I'll be back in about an hour or so. Of course, darling, be careful in the sun. When Amanda left, Ellen allowed herself a deep sigh. She took her cell phone and typed a message to her friend Susan. She arrived, distant as always. I don't know if I'll be able to break through this barrier this time. The response came almost immediately. Patience, Ellen. Rome wasn't built in a day. You're stronger than you think. Ellen smiled sadly at her phone. If only it were as simple as Susan made it seem. For years, she had tried to rebuild the relationship with her daughter, without success. With each attempt, she felt more inadequate, as if there were a secret manual on how to be a mother that everyone knew except her. What Ellen didn't know was that this visit would be different from all the previous ones. That in a few hours, during lunch with the family gathered, masks would begin to fall, and long silenced truths would come to light, forever changing the course of that complicated relationship. Promptly at noon, the gate of Ellen's house opened to receive the guests. Richard, her ex-husband, arrived driving an imported SUV accompanied by his wife Debbie, 20 years younger than him. Soon after, Ellen's parents' car parked, Teresa and August, both in their 80s, but with enviable vitality. Amanda transformed completely upon seeing her father. She ran to hug him with an enthusiasm she had never shown with Ellen. "Daddy, I missed you so much," she exclaimed, hanging on Richard's neck, who smiled proudly. "My princess, how beautiful you are. Paris did you good, I see." Ellen observed the scene from the porch, feeling that familiar pang in her chest. It had always been this way. For Amanda, her father was the hero, the confidant, the safe harbor. Ellen was just the mother who stayed behind, taking care of the house while Richard built his brilliant career and his new family. "Honey, help me with the salad, please," Ellen called from the kitchen, trying to disguise her discomfort. Amanda waved distractedly without moving. She remained absorbed in conversation with her father, showing photos on her phone from her recent work trip to France. "So typical," Ellen murmured to herself, chopping tomatoes with more force than necessary. It was Debbie who appeared in the kitchen, smiling as always. "Need help, Ellen? I can finish the salad while you receive your parents." Ellen forced a smile. She hated to admit it, but Debbie was genuinely kind. It would be much easier to hate her if she were arrogant or unpleasant. "Thank you, Debbie. Can you get that blue serving dish from the top cabinet?" Teresa entered the kitchen leaning on her cane, her watchful eyes not missing a single detail. "My daughter, you look worn out. Haven't you been sleeping well?" she asked bluntly. "I'm fine, Mom. Just a little tired with the preparations." "Humph," the lady maid, unconvinced. "That girl continues to treat you like a maid from what I see." "Mom, please," Ellen whispered, looking nervously at the door. "Don't start." Lunch was served on the back porch, under a large grape arbor that provided pleasant shade. The abundant table contrasted with the tense atmosphere that Ellen felt growing. Amanda distributed gifts brought from her travels, an Italian tie for her father, a French perfume for Debbie, Swiss chocolates for her grandparents. For Ellen, a small photo frame with the Eiffel Tower, clearly a last-minute purchase at the airport. "I loved the gift, honey, thank you," said Ellen, hiding her disappointment. "You're welcome. I thought it was just like you," replied Amanda distractedly, already turning her attention back to her father. The conversation flowed animatedly about business, travels, and Amanda's recent achievements at work. Richard made no effort to hide his pride in his executive daughter, while Ellen remained silent, serving the guests and collecting the plates. "So when are you going to give us a grandchild?" asked Teresa, provoking an embarrassing silence. Amanda rolled her eyes. "Grandma, we've already talked about this. My career comes first right now." Career. In my day, a woman found fulfillment by having a family," grumbled the elderly lady. "In your day, Grandma, women couldn't even have a bank account without their husband's authorization," Amanda retorted acidly. Ellen intervened quickly. "Who wants dessert? I made that milk pudding everyone likes." While serving dessert, Ellen accidentally dropped a spoon, which made a metallic noise when it hit the ceramic floor. "Always clumsy," commented Richard with a smile that tried to be good-humored but sounded condescending. "Remember, Amanda, how your mother was always breaking things around the house?" Amanda laughed, complicit with her father. "How could I forget? Remember that Chinese vase from Grandma Olivia?" Ellen felt her face burning. "It was an accident. I was cleaning and—" "Ellen never had much of a knack for taking care of the house, actually," interrupted Teresa, addressing Debbie as if Ellen weren't present. "She was always disorganized since she was little. Richard was the one who had patience with her." "Patience?" Ellen let escape louder than she intended. "Is that what you think, Mom, that Richard had patience with me?" A heavy silence fell over the table. Everyone looked at Ellen with expressions ranging from surprise to discomfort. It wasn't common to see her respond or show irritation. "Ellen, your mother didn't mean anything by it," intervened August, trying to appease. "Let's change the subject." "No, Dad, I think we need to talk about this." Ellen placed the napkin on the table with a calmness that didn't reflect her inner state. "I'm tired of hearing how clumsy I am, how incapable I am, how lucky I was to have a husband like Richard, who, by the way, cheated on me for years before finally having the courage to ask for a divorce." "Mom!" exclaimed Amanda, horrified. "This is neither the time nor the place for this." "And when would it be, Amanda? You barely speak to me. You spend the entire year away, and when you come, you treat this house like a hotel, and me like an employee. Now it's my fault? Typical. Always playing the victim." Amanda threw her napkin on the table. "That's why I prefer to stay with Dad when I come. There at least I don't have to walk on eggshells or put up with drama." Ellen felt as if she had been slapped. So that's how her daughter saw her. As dramatic? As a burden? "Amanda, calm down," intervened Richard, visibly uncomfortable. "Your mother is obviously stressed." "Stressed? Seriously, Richard?" Ellen let out a humorless laugh. 25 years married, and that's what you think? That I'm stressed? No, I'm hurt. Deeply hurt by how all of you treat me." Debbie, clearly uncomfortable, stood up. "I think I'd better give you some privacy to talk as a family." "You don't need to leave, Debbie," said Ellen. "You're family now. And honestly, you're the only one here who treats me with a minimum of respect." Teresa tapped her cane on the floor. "What kind of spectacle is this, Ellen? Are you trying to embarrass all of us? This is not the upbringing I gave you." "The upbringing you gave me, Mom, was to always diminish myself, always please others, always blame myself when things go wrong. And look, it worked perfectly. I have a daughter who can barely stand to be near me and a family that treats me like a nuisance." Amanda rose abruptly. "I'm not going to sit here listening to this. I always knew this visit would be a mistake." "Sit down, Amanda." Ellen's voice sounded firm, surprising everyone. "For the first time in your life, you're going to listen to me." Something in Ellen's determination made Amanda hesitate. Slowly, she sat back down, her lips compressed into a thin line of irritation. "Do you have any idea what it was like for me?" continued Ellen, now with a more controlled voice. "Raising a daughter practically alone while Richard traveled for weeks on end. Rebuilding my life after a divorce in which I lost not only my husband, but also my daughter's respect. Hearing comments about how I'm clumsy, dramatic, exaggerated, tears silently streamed down Ellen's face, but she continued, determined to finally release everything she had kept inside for years. Do you know why I'm clumsy? Because I've had arthritis in my hands for years, but I never complained, never wanted to be a burden. Do you know why I seem confused sometimes? Because I take anxiety medication that makes me dizzy, anxiety that I developed trying to be perfect for all of you. Richard looked away, visibly uncomfortable. Amanda stared at her mother with an indecipherable expression, perhaps surprise, perhaps guilt. And you know what's worse, Amanda, you never asked. You were never really interested in me, in my life, in my dreams. To you, I'm just the one who stayed behind, who wasn't successful like your father, who was content to take care of an empty house. A heavy silence hung over the table. Teresa opened her mouth to speak, but August placed his hand over hers, silencing her with a warning look. I'm not saying this to blame anyone, continued Ellen, wiping away tears with the back of her hand. I'm just tired of pretending everything is okay when it's not. I'm tired of being the doormat that everyone steps on and then complains is dirty. Amanda finally spoke, her voice trembling. Why did you never say any of this before? Because I was afraid, Amanda. Afraid of losing what little we still had. Afraid that you would distance yourself completely. But now I realize I lost you a long time ago. With those words, Ellen stood up and walked into the house, leaving a stunned silence behind. For the first time in decades, she had spoken her truth. And although it hurt, there was also something liberating in that moment. That afternoon, after the tumultuous lunch, Ellen's house plunged into a dense silence. Her parents were the first to leave, Teresa still murmuring about difficult temperaments and unnecessary scandals. Richard and Debbie left soon after, with vague promises to call later to talk calmly. Ellen remained sitting on the edge of her bed, her trembling hands holding an old photo album. Images of Amanda as a child smiling, hugging her on beaches, birthdays, and graduations. When had that distancing begun? At what exact moment had spontaneous smiles transformed into calculated poses for cameras? A soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. May I come in? It was Amanda, still elegantly dressed, but with a different countenance, more vulnerable, less defensive. Ellen just nodded, closing the album and setting it aside. Amanda sat in the armchair near the window, maintaining a safe distance. For a few moments, neither spoke. The silence, for the first time in years, didn't seem hostile, just necessary. I didn't know about the arthritis, Amanda finally said, looking at her mother's hands. I never told anyone, not even your father. Why? Ellen shrugged. Because I learned early on that complaining about pain was a sign of weakness. Your grandmother always said that a strong woman endures in silence. Amanda frowned, processing that information. Is it true that Dad cheated on you? For years, Ellen sighed deeply. Yes, but I don't want you to think badly of him for it. Our marriage was already over long before that. We stayed together because of you, actually. Because of me? Amanda seemed genuinely surprised. I never asked for that. Of course not, dear. It was our decision. We thought it was best for you to have a structured family. Ellen made air quotes with her fingers. A classic mistake, as your father would say. A new silence settled in, heavier this time. Why did you never pursue a career like Dad? Amanda suddenly asked. You had potential. Grandpa always says you were brilliant in school. The question caught Ellen by surprise. She had never imagined that Amanda would be curious about her past, about her abandoned dreams. I had plans, you know. I wanted to study architecture. I even passed the entrance exam. Ellen smiled melancholically. But then I met your father, got pregnant, and, well, priorities changed. Do you regret it? Having you? Never. Ellen responded without hesitation. Giving up my dreams, sometimes, but life is made of choices, Amanda, and we can't always have everything. Amanda rose restlessly, walking to the window. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, tinting the sky with orange hues. You know what irritated me most about you, Mom? She asked, still with her back turned. It was that acceptance, that resignation. As if you didn't deserve more from life. Ellen felt the impact of those words. She had never thought that her attitude could be interpreted that way by her daughter. When Dad left home, I was sure you would fall apart, continued Amanda, that we would be forced to live off charity in my grandparents' house, that you would become one of those bitter women we knew. And is that why you distanced yourself? Out of fear of seeing me fail? Amanda turned slowly, her eyes watery. I distanced myself because I didn't want to be like you, Mom. I didn't want to become someone who gives up everything for others and then lives off crumbs of affection. The words hit Ellen like a punch to the stomach, painful, but loaded with a truth that she had never been able to see. I never wanted you to be like me, she finally replied, her voice choked. I always wished for you to have all the opportunities that I didn't have, to be strong, independent. And I am, Amanda interrupted vehemently. I am exactly what you and Dad wanted me to be. Successful, independent, career-focused. Then why do you seem so unhappy, sweetie? The question hung in the air like a soap bubble, fragile and iridescent. Amanda opened her mouth to respond, but no sound came out, her eyes filled with tears that she desperately tried to contain. I'm not unhappy, she finally said, but her voice betrayed uncertainty. I'm exactly where I always wanted to be. Ellen stood up and, with caution, approached her daughter. She didn't try to touch her, respecting the space that Amanda always seemed to need. You know you can tell me anything, don't you? That regardless of what happens in your life, I will always be here for you. Amanda wiped away a furtive tear. Even after how I treated you today, how I've been treating you for years. Especially after that, replied Ellen with a sad smile. That's what mothers do. We love unconditionally. Something seemed to break inside Amanda. Her shoulders, always so straight and proud, curved slightly. Her face, always so controlled, contorted in an expression of contained pain. I was fired last week, she confessed, in an almost inaudible whisper. Ellen contained her surprise. What? But you just got back from Paris. You said the project was a success. I lied, to everyone. Amanda ran her hands over her face, defeated. I didn't go to Paris for work. I went to try to save my marriage. Marriage? Ellen couldn't disguise her shock. You're married? Amanda let out a bitter laugh. I was, for 2 years. To Paul, my co-worker. Nobody knew. We thought it would be better to keep it secret so it wouldn't affect our careers. Ellen tried to process the information. Her daughter secretly married for 2 years. How had she not noticed anything? What happened? He cheated on me. With my assistant. Amanda now spoke with an artificial calmness, as if she were relating a story that had happened to someone else. I found out by accident, seeing messages on his phone. Classic, isn't it? Oh, darling. Ellen finally allowed herself to touch her daughter's arm. To her surprise, Amanda didn't pull away. I confronted them both. There was a terrible scene at the office. The entire department found out. Amanda took a deep breath. The scandal reached the directors. Paul was transferred to the Singapore branch with a promotion. I was put on paid leave while they reconsider my position in the company. Corporate language for pack your things and leave quietly. Ellen felt a wave of indignation. That's completely unfair. You were the victim in this situation. Justice doesn't exist in the corporate world, Mum. There's image, networking, and who knows who. Amanda shrugged. Paul is the global CFO's nephew. I'm just replaceable. The parallel with Ellen's own story was painfully obvious. The same betrayal, the same injustice decades later. And what do you plan to do now? I don't know. For the first time, Amanda seemed genuinely lost. I have savings for a few months. Maybe I'll try something at another multinational. Maybe I'll accept that offer in Berlin that I refused last year. Ellen hesitated for a moment before asking, what if you stayed here for a while, until you decide on the next step? Amanda looked around as if evaluating the room, the house, the small town. Here? In Westfield? There was a mixture of incredulity and consideration in her voice. What would I do here? Breathe, think, heal. Ellen smiled softly. And maybe, just maybe, help me with that municipal library restoration project that I mentioned last Christmas. They're desperate for someone with experience in cultural marketing. Amanda frowned, thoughtful. I don't remember you mentioning that. Of course you don't remember. You were too busy showing photos of your trip to Japan to your father. There was no accusation in Ellen's voice, just a statement. A reflective silence fell between them. Outside, the first stars were beginning to dot the night sky. I don't know if I can, Mum, Amanda finally said, her voice almost a whisper. I don't know if I can go back to the beginning, start over from scratch. I'm 32 years old. I should be at the peak of my career, not hiding in a small town licking my wounds. Who said starting over is going back to the beginning? Ellen gently took her daughter's hands in hers. Sometimes, starting over is finally finding the right path after spending years going in the wrong direction. Amanda didn't respond immediately. Her eyes, so similar to Ellen's, scanned the room that had once been hers, the place where she had grown up, dreamed, planned her escape to the real world. And now, ironically, she was considering it as a possible refuge. "Can I think about it?" Ellen nodded, releasing her daughter's hands. "All the time you need. There's no rush." That night, for the first time in years, they had dinner together. It wasn't a perfect meal. There were still uncomfortable silences and carefully avoided topics. But there were also moments of genuine connection, small openings in a wall that had taken decades to build. When Ellen went to bed, she found a folded note under her pillow. Amanda's elegant handwriting said only, "Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I deserved it." Ellen fell asleep with the note in her hand, and for the first time in a long time, without the weight of loneliness crushing her chest. 6 months passed since that afternoon of confessions in Ellen's room. Autumn had arrived in Westfield, painting the trees in golden and reddish tones, while a cool breeze swept through the streets of the small suburban town. The house that previously seemed too big for Ellen now vibrated with a different energy. On the back porch, where months before the family confrontation had occurred, a small work table now housed 2 laptops, coffee cups, and neatly spread papers. "I think we did it, Mom." Amanda smiled, looking at the computer screen. The mayor's office approved all the resources for the second phase of the library restoration. Ellen, who was painting a picture at the other end of the porch, smiled back. "I never doubted it. Your project was impeccable." "Our project," Amanda corrected. "Without your connections with the Historical Preservation Group, we would never have gotten those letters of support." It was still strange for both of them, this new dynamic, the partnership, the collaboration, the mutual respect that grew each day. It hadn't been easy. The first months of living together brought heated discussions, old patterns trying to re-establish themselves, wounds unexpectedly reopening. But they also brought discoveries. Ellen learned that behind the cold, calculating executive was a sensitive woman who still cried watching Disney animations. Amanda discovered that her mother, far from being just the resigned housewife, was a talented artist whose paintings were beginning to gain recognition in local galleries. Amanda's phone rang, interrupting the moment. She looked at the screen and frowned. "It's Paul again." Ellen raised her eyebrows. "The 4th call this week. What does he want now?" "The same as always. Says he made the biggest mistake of his life, that he's sorry, that Singapore is hell without me." Amanda sighed, rejecting the call, as if just apologizing was enough. "And how do you feel about that?" Amanda reflected for a moment, observing the distant mountains. "You know, before I would have run back, I would have pretended nothing happened, that we could start over, that the betrayal was just a slip." She made air quotes with her fingers. Now I see that I deserved more. I deserve more." Ellen smiled discreetly, continuing to paint. Her daughter had changed so much in those months. She no longer wore impeccable suits every day. Her hair, previously always tied in a severe bun, now fell in natural waves over her shoulders. Even her posture was different, more relaxed, more authentic. "I have news," said Ellen, changing the subject. "Remember that curator from the Contemporary Art Museum in Chicago? She saw my paintings at last week's exhibition and wants to include 3 of them in the spring show." "Mom, that's incredible." Amanda jumped up, hugging Ellen from behind, getting paint on herself in the process. "We need to celebrate. Dinner out tonight?" "Only if you let me pay this time," replied Ellen, laughing at the blue stain that now decorated her daughter's blouse. Amanda's phone rang again. This time it wasn't Paul but Richard. "Hi, Dad," Amanda answered, signaling to Ellen that she would be quick. Ellen went back to concentrating on her painting, giving privacy to the conversation. But she couldn't help noticing how Amanda's expression gradually changed, from relaxed to tense, from smiling to serious. "No, Dad. We've already talked about this," she was saying firmly. "Yes, I understand your concern, but the decision is mine. No, I'm not wasting my potential. Yes, I'm aware that the market doesn't wait." When she finally hung up, Amanda seemed exhausted. "Problems?" asked Ellen, trying not to seem intrusive. "The usual. Dad doesn't understand how I can be satisfied working on provincial projects, as he says. He thinks I'm throwing my career in the trash. And what do you think? Amanda looked at the documents spread on the table, plans of the century-old library, budgets for restoring rare books, projects for literary workshops for underprivileged children in the region. I think that for the first time I'm doing something that really matters, something that isn't just to impress a boss or guarantee a bonus at the end of the year. She smiled. Something that lets me sleep peacefully at night. Ellen nodded, understanding perfectly. She too had been rediscovering purposes and passions that she had believed lost forever. The sound of the doorbell interrupted the conversation. Amanda went to answer and returned moments later with an envelope in her hands and a puzzled expression. "It's for you. Special delivery." Ellen opened the envelope, curious. Inside was an official letter and a check with a considerable amount. "What is this?" asked Amanda, noticing the surprise on her mother's face. "It's from the law firm I hired to resolve the alimony issue with your father." Ellen seemed astonished. Apparently, Richard never updated the amounts as determined by the judge. "This is the retroactive payment for the last 5 years, with interest." "That's a small fortune," commented Amanda, looking over her mother's shoulder. "It's enough to realize that dream," murmured Ellen almost to herself. "What dream?" Ellen hesitated for a moment as if gathering courage. "Remember when I told you I wanted to study architecture? Well, in the last few months, I've been researching historic preservation courses. There's a special program for mature students at Chicago University." She took a deep breath. "I thought it was a silly fantasy, but now it's perfectly possible," Amanda completed, smiling broadly. "Mom, that's perfect. It aligns with everything we're doing here. You don't think I'm too old to go back to school?" "Old?" Amanda laughed. "Mom, you're 58, not 98. People restart their lives at much older ages. And just look at you. You're painting, managing community projects, inspiring an entire town with your initiatives." Ellen felt a warmth in her chest that she hadn't experienced in a long time. It was the warmth of possibility, of hope, of a new beginning. "And you?" she asked. "Are you still thinking about accepting that offer from the Cultural Preservation NGO in New Orleans?" "I'm seriously considering it. The work would be incredible, mapping intangible heritage in traditional communities, creating sustainable tourist routes." Amanda paused. "But it means moving there in a few months." A understanding silence hung between them. Both knew that this moment would come, when the paths that had reconnected would need to separate again. But this time it would be different. There would be no resentments, no emotional distance, just two women following their own destinies with each other's support. "New Orleans isn't that far," Ellen finally commented, "and I heard there are direct flights to Chicago practically every day." "And you could come visit me during your college breaks," added Amanda. "I'm sure you'll love the French Quarter and the beaches at Grand Isle." "That would mean we'd have to keep in regular contact," joked Ellen. "A sacrifice I'm willing to make," replied Amanda in the same tone, before becoming serious again. "You know what impresses me most, Mom? How everything changed in such a short time. 6 months ago I was devastated, thinking my life was over because I lost a job and a husband who didn't value me. And now? Now I realize it was the best thing that could have happened." Amanda smiled, thoughtful. "I had to lose everything I thought was important to find what really matters." Ellen nodded, understanding deeply. Sometimes we need to get lost to find ourselves. At that moment, Ellen's phone rang. It was Teresa. "Hello, Mum. Ellen, dear. I'm calling to confirm Sunday lunch. Your father is eager to see you and Amanda, and he wants details about this museum exhibition story." Ellen smiled, surprised by her mother's affectionate tone, something rare until a few months ago. "We'll be there, Mom, and tell Dad he can prepare all the questions he wants about my paintings." "Great, and Ellen?" "Yes?" "I'm proud of you, daughter, very proud." When she hung up, Ellen had tears in her eyes. "Everything okay?" asked Amanda, concerned. "Better than ever," replied Ellen, wiping away tears with a smile. "You know, a year ago I felt invisible, as if I were just an accessory in others' lives. Richard's ex-wife, Amanda's mother, Teresa's problematic daughter. And now I'm just Ellen, and that's more than enough." At the work table, Amanda's computer emitted an alert, an important new email. She read it quickly and turned to her mother with a radiant smile. The Department of Culture approved our proposal for the literary festival. We'll have complete funding." The two hugged, celebrating yet another achievement. Outside the house, the golden autumn leaves danced in the breeze. An ephemeral and perfect spectacle like so many moments in life. That night, as they prepared dinner together, Ellen reflected on the strange paths that life took. How the greatest wounds could transform into the most important lessons. How endings could in fact be disguised new beginnings. "What are you thinking about?" asked Amanda, noticing her mother's distant look. "About how alike we are, even though we fought so hard against it." Amanda smiled, recognizing the truth in those words. "I think we needed to distance ourselves to really see each other," she said, putting her arm around her mother's shoulders. "And now that we see each other, we can finally follow our own paths without fear or resentment." "Without fear," repeated Ellen, savoring the freedom contained in those words. Without fear. Outside, the first stars were beginning to dot the darkening sky. A new day was ending. But for Ellen and Amanda, it was just the beginning of a journey that promised more discoveries, more challenges, and especially more encounters with the world and with themselves. The end of the story. Dear listeners, we hope that Ellen and Amanda's story has touched your hearts. To continue this emotional journey, we've prepared a special playlist with equally moving stories. Find it here, clicking to your left. If you were moved by this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like the video. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of human relationships and the paths to healing and self-knowledge. Don't miss our upcoming content. We're eager to read your comments.